And we are going to talk to Brad Micklin. He is a family law attorney, and we're going to discuss how our new tax laws may make divorce proceedings even messier still. Brad, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, Dr. Drew. Lauren, how are you both
Hi
today?
there.
We are great. So are we talking about the new tax laws federally, or the way that California is sort of responding to the tax laws? What is making it messier?
Well, I think it's partly both. Largely, it's going to be the federal tax code changes that are causing the most disruption because of the loss of the alimony deduction. But part of the confusion is also going to exist from the fact that many states may still allow the alimony deduction. So it's going to convolute how we can calculate the numbers going forward.
So if both parties are living in separate states, how does that work?
Yes.
Well, it would probably depend on where the divorce is filed. That state law would probably control it.
Wow. Lauren and I were talking about family law courts generally and how difficult it is to get caught when you get caught in that system.
Not difficult, but it's just a huge, it's a money drain.
Yeah.
It's a huge...
Well, I always say divorces aren't complicated. People are.
Yeah.
So if you have reasonable people, it doesn't have to be as bad as most that you would hear about.
Our question was, are there ways to opt out of the morass? Can you have an adjudicator, sort of mediator, or does that have to be settled before you get married if that's going to happen? Or do people routinely do that? And does that make things simpler, or is it still get just as complicated?
Well, there are a lot of ways to opt out of the process itself. Many states, including New Jersey, much of the process is actually a form of mediation. They'll bring you to meet with an independent person that tries to help you meet the differences between the issues. There's also arbitration, which is where somebody is brought in and makes a binding decision. There's collaborative law now that's more of a group collaborating for one goal to resolve a divorce. So there's now a lot of mechanisms available to sort of opt out of the process that most of us are familiar with.
Okay, so what this is going to do, right now, under the statute, the higher earning spouse can deduct alimony payments on his or her tax filings, and the recipient of those alimony payments will include the payments as part of his or her taxable gross income. But
Right.
if you have a divorce finalized after 2019, those alimony payments will no longer be deductible?
Correct.
For the payer?
Correct.
But the recipient will still pay taxes on it?
No, there's no tax effect to it on either side. So it's not a tax benefit or burden.
Okay, but there's no incentive to pay alimony.
Well, there's never an incentive to pay alimony, even if you took away the taxes. But the real problem is going to be...
Doesn't take the sting out a little bit.
There's many... Well, right. I don't think it's going to impact the payer as much as people think. I think it's going to impact the recipient.
Why?
Because it used to be a sort of tax shifting. You got a larger deduction, so paying the alimony didn't hurt so much. But most of the alimony was being set on what the contemplated deduction was going to be, and not an exact number necessarily. Now, the change is essentially going to make alimony from your net income. So the payer is going to know exactly how much is coming out of his or her pocket, not trying to adjust it for tax purposes any longer.
Oh, I see.
And is that going to reduce the amount of alimony generally, or is that going to just it's going to make people less likely to get divorced because it's going to be so punitive?
Well, it's hard to say. I think it's going to leave less money on the table. I've run analysis just recently for clients who are approaching the 2019 mark, and if you run with, let's say one person at a $200,000 salary and the other spouse at a $50,000 salary, there's a $20,000, $30,000 swing in the monies available 2018 to 2019 under the new code. So there's going to be less money to go around, and that's the biggest problem I think we're going to face with this tax code change.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
Okay, so if you have child support payments, according to this piece, the payer will probably try and pay their child support and put less cash toward the alimony.
Well, I'm not really sure if it's going to make a difference with regard to that. In certain states, in New Jersey for one, income is very significant to child support.
Right.
And it used to be that you used your gross income and then you took an alimony deduction from it and that adjusted your income. I'm not sure how that's going to change or impact child support, but it still goes back to my original point that there's still just less money on the table for both parties. It's going to impact the spouses and their children.
Wow. I don't know. I get very depressed when I think about what goes on in divorce proceedings. It's just so people are so miserable. They're encouraged to do terrible things to each other.
They don't make logical decisions, or they just do things out of anger and spite.
And as you said, it's the divorce. It's not the complication. It's the people that are
right. And those are the aberrations, believe it or not. Those are the stories that you hear about, the bad, ugly divorces. I was just doing a spot today on Law and Crime about a heat of passion murder during divorce. I mean, there are ugly cases, but they're really not the norm. They're just the ones that you hear about.
Mm-hmm. The norm is what? Just miserable?
Amicable?
Not horrible?
Well, it's not a pleasant situation, but what I can honestly tell you is a lot of my clients come to me when their situation is at its worst. People will resist the divorce for as long as they can.
Sure.
So there's really little place to go but up from getting divorced.
That's a good way to look at it.
I guess so.
This is going to be your worst day.
All right, Brad. Well, thank you so much. Where can we find you? The website?
My website is MicklinLawGroup.com, which is MICKLIN, lawgroup.com, all one word. And my YouTube page is Brad Michael Micklin.
What will we find there?
I do a lot of videos. I do a daily tip on different aspects of family law. I do a weekly how-to video, like how to prepare for trial. And I do a monthly webinar for 40 or 50 minutes where I go into depth into large topics like the tax code reforms, how is alimony calculated, preparing for domestic violence, and so that there's a wealth of resources that people can go to and learn about the process. Because I find in my years of practice that people are so unfamiliar with the process, they don't even know what to ask.
Right. Interesting.
So I created all those resources so that people can go and actually find the information on their own.
That does sound great. Thanks very much, Brad. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good luck to both of you. Thanks for having me.
You got it.